Thank you for joining me for the 4th episode of The Tangible Darkness. In this episode, we will continue to explore what happened once we established communication with the other side through the Ouija board. Listen as it begins to reveal secrets. I know you've been looking forward to hearing the rest of this story, so let's begin. It's 1994, and Jay, Taryn, and I are all getting settled into our new apartment. Taryn is a manager at McDonald's and hires Jay, and they work together. I was struggling to make ends meet at my current job, and Richard encouraged me to go apply at the new Super Kmart in town. I reluctantly agree, and I end up securing a job, whereas he does not. It's bittersweet. Not only is it full-time, but it pays even more than my current job. On the downside, it is a graveyard shift, so I'm working overnight every single week. I'm content with making more money, despite missing out on a lot of time with my friends. Sometimes, we just have to make those sacrifices in life. Although this puts a damper on our time together and using the Ouija board, we always make time to play with it. Jay's grandmother sometimes used to come over and spend time with him. She was much older, so he would have to pick her up. We were all acquainted with her, and she was quite friendly, and she enjoyed chatting with us. We explained to her that we used the board, and she stated she used to use it when she was a little girl. She didn't seem at all bothered that we were using the board on a regular basis. I recall Jay telling me that she was very superstitious, but she didn't seem bothered by the Ouija board. On one occasion, she sat on the sofa and was preoccupied with something, and we told her that we were going to bring it out and use it. She seemed amused, but at the same time was paying attention to something else. We asked her if she would like us to ask the board something about her. She replied she was perfectly fine with us asking it something regarding her. We proceeded with our usual ritual of asking it to speak with us. Once it acknowledged that it was present and ready to speak with us, we asked it to tell us something about her. As I stated, she was half paying attention while she was doing something else while we were playing with the board. The board proceeded to spell out the word bitch. Taryn and I looked at each other, wide-eyed, and giggled to ourselves. I whispered, "What do we say? What do we do?" She shrugged her shoulders, and we told Jay's grandmother that it would not respond. It made for an awkward situation, and we didn't want to embarrass her. Jay's grandmother laughed it off, almost sure of herself that the board doesn't work at all. Because it came up with such an insulting response, we decided we would put it away while Jay's grandmother was visiting. There came a time where all three of us had the evening off. Since we knew we would have the time off, we decided to invite Armand and his girlfriend Jenny, as well as a third acquaintance named Anthony. No one really knew Anthony but me and our mutual friend Alex. Anthony was also having problems with his family and was couch surfing at the time. He had spent at least 1 or 2 nights with me. Alex came to know him because Alex's mother and Anthony's mother attended the same church. He had spent some time at Alex's home as well. However, I think Anthony would slowly wear out his welcome everywhere he went. He was a very nice guy, with a lot of etiquette and good manners. I think he was just running with the wrong crowd. He was also very good looking. He was about 6 feet tall, light complexion with green eyes and very dark hair. Most people found him attractive, but he was one of those good-looking, bad boy types. Nonetheless, he was also invited to this Ouija board session. Armand and his girlfriend Jenny would also be attending. Armand and Jay used to work together at a call center here in San Antonio, that has probably employed nearly everyone in the city at one time or another. That is how I came to know Armand. This would make for an interesting evening, as it was clear to me and everyone else that Armand was attracted to me. This would be my first time meeting his girlfriend. He had mentioned in previous conversations that he really wasn't into her, but she was still somehow in his life. He said that she was a really sweet girl, but he just didn't have the heart to break up and hurt her feelings. But enough about that. We're talking about paranormal events, not Dr. Phil topics in this podcast. We all gathered together that evening. Some of us may even have brought alcohol to drink, but I personally had no interest in drinking that night. It was the first time for Jenny, Armand, and Anthony to witness a Ouija board session with us. They had heard the stories we had been sharing, but this was their first opportunity to see it in action. Anthony, on the other hand, was simply there because he needed a place to stay for the night. It was crucial for us to convince them that Taryn and I were not manipulating the planchette, just as it was important for us to be certain ourselves. To demonstrate this, we refrained from looking at the board directly. Instead of sitting face to face in the traditional manner, we sat side by side. I placed my right hand on the planchette, while Taryn placed her left hand on it, and we both turned our gaze away from the board. We asked a few questions, nothing special or of any importance, just to simply demonstrate that we were not in control of the board. Once that was established, we then proceeded to ask it specific questions. I beckoned the board, or rather the mysterious entity within it, to divulge something about Anthony. It proceeded to spell out a name that eludes my memory. We inquired if Anthony recognized that name, and he affirmed that he did. The board then spelled out the word prison. Anthony shared that he knew someone by that name who had also been incarcerated. He further revealed that this person had passed away. Unfortunately, I cannot recall whether Anthony specified whether the individual died while in prison or after their release. Anthony's astonishment at the revelations unveiled by the board was unmistakable. He struggled to comprehend the significance of it all. At that moment, he posed a question to the group, wondering if his deceased friend was attempting to establish contact. I voiced my skepticism, expressing the belief that this entity possessed an uncanny ability to acquire personal information about individuals. We sat together engaging in a discussion for several minutes before deciding to proceed and inquire about someone else in the room. I requested a volunteer, and Jenny raised her hand, volunteering herself. Once again, we implored the board to reveal something about Jenny. It spelled out the word uncle, followed by the chilling word molested. Jay, who had taken on the role of our official note-taker, cautiously and almost reluctantly conveyed the word molested to the group. The atmosphere within the group grew exceedingly awkward, especially for Jenny, who was unfamiliar with everyone present except for Armand. Our collective gaze couldn't help but fixate on her, as she undoubtedly felt the intensity of our scrutiny, awaiting her confirmation of the allegation. With a nod, she affirmed that her uncle had indeed subjected her to sexual abuse during her childhood. Once again, we were left utterly dumbfounded, grappling with the bewildering knowledge that this entity possessed such dark and deeply personal secrets. It has been nearly 3 decades since that evening, and the specific details of its conclusion escape me. However, I confidently state that we refrained from posing any further questions after the revelation of Jenny's secret. Whether it was due to the heavy weight that settled upon the evening, dampening the mood, or perhaps fueled by the fear of unearthing more unsettling truths about those present, I cannot say for certain. Life carried on its usual course after that eventful evening. I continued working night shifts at Super Kmart. Initially, things were going well, but once again, I encountered difficulties with my new manager. I stood out from the rest, and it was evident to certain individuals that didn't quite fit in with the quote-unquote normal crowd, which I often referred to as the boring people. Fate seemed to have a twisted sense of humor, as my manager began gradually reducing my hours week after week, reminiscent of my previous employment experience. On one particular day, when I went to collect my paycheck, another employee informed me that the manager wished to speak with me. This was an opportunity for me to address my dwindling hours, so I welcomed the conversation. We met at the front of the store, where he expressed several grievances he had with me. I listened attentively to his words and then voiced my concern about being unable to sustain myself on the meager hours he provided. I made it clear that if he couldn't offer more hours, I would have to seek employment elsewhere, to which he coldly replied, "I'm not telling you not to look for another job, but you do what you have to do." At that moment, it became apparent that he wanted me to quit. Unfortunately, I complied with this unspoken wish, and I simply never returned to work. At the time, I was young and naive, unaware of the legal recourse available to me. I found myself unemployed and uncertain of what steps to take. Taryn and I continued our sessions with the board, and one day something extraordinary occurred. In the midst of our session, the board informed us that it had to depart, but promised to speak with us later. We were taken aback by this unprecedented turn of events, as it had never happened before, nor since. Curiosity piqued. We inquired why it needed to leave, and it revealed that someone had just passed away. The planchette glided over the goodbye message on the board and ceased its movement. It remained immobile until later that evening. When it resumed communication with us that night, I desired confirmation of its earlier statement. I asked the entity to provide us with a first name, last name, and the street where the deceased person had lived. Astonishingly, it spelled out all the requested information, prompted me to step away from the board. Excitedly, I called out to Taryn and Jay, exclaiming, oh my God, look at this." I retrieved the phone book from the kitchen and showed them the person's name and the corresponding street address. Once again, we were utterly amazed by the knowledge the board seemingly possessed. I suggested that we call the provided phone number, hoping that someone would answer. If the deceased person lived alone, as the entity claimed, the phone would go unanswered unless there was another resident in the household. If we asked for the deceased person by name and someone else answered, they might inadvertently reveal that the individual had indeed passed away. I chose to make the call at around 8 in the evening, assuming that most people would be home at that time. However, despite dialing the number multiple times throughout the week, no one ever answered my calls. It seemed that once again, the board had imparted unknowable knowledge to us merely by posing questions. I cannot recall the precise timing of the subsequent event, but at some point I proposed to Taryn and Jay that the idea of using the entity's abilities to obtain the winning lottery numbers. If the board could reveal information beyond human capacity, could it also demonstrate its prowess in other areas? The board had undoubtedly showcased one extraordinary ability, but we wondered if it could extend its powers to other realms. At this point, the Ouija board was clearly demonstrating clairvoyance, but was it capable of precognition? The term clairvoyance is French in origin, and it comes from the combination of two ancient terms meaning clear and seeing or vision. Clairvoyance is the ability to gain information about a subject, location, or even an object. There is usually no logical explanation for such special insight except the theory of extrasensory perception. Historically, claims of clairvoyance are well documented, even if they are sometimes misleading. Religion has certainly documented episodes of clairvoyance, usually from the words of prophets, angels, or gods living on earth. From monotheistic religions to pagan religions, almost every religion has documented instances of the paranormal, whether attributed to God or the practice of divination. The only argument among religious leaders is not that clairvoyance exists, which to most is a given, but whether it comes from the divine or the enemy of the divine. In pagan religion, there's a greater emphasis on the individual practicing magic or miracles, whether to their own prosperity or detriment. The Ouija board was clearly demonstrating clairvoyance, but was it capable of precognition? Precognition is the ability to perceive or foresee events that will occur in the future. It is often associated with prophecy or future vision and is believed to be accessed through an extrasensory medium or sixth sense. While there is no objective evidence to support the reality of precognition, many people consider it to be plausible. Individuals with precognition may experience knowledge of the future through visions or flashes of information, which can occur while awake or in a dream state. These experiences can range from having a mental picture of an upcoming accident to feeling a sense of caution about going somewhere. In most cases, precognitive experiences occur within a 48-hour period before the future event, sometimes even within 24 hours. However, there are rare instances where precognitive experiences happen months or years in advance of the actual event. Additionally, around 80 to 85% of precognitive experiences involve close emotional connections, such as spouses, family members, or friends. The remaining experiences may involve casual acquaintances or strangers affected by major disasters. The practice of foreseeing the future has been present throughout history, with various cultures employing divination methods and prophetic techniques. Symbolic visions and precognition are prevalent in the folklore and literature of different civilizations, including the Greeks, Romans, Babylonians, prehistoric Chinese, Celts, Native Americans, Zulus, and Maori. Many recorded instances of precognition involve death or impending disasters. Whether this focus on negative events is a genuine characteristic of most precognitive experiences or is influenced by the strong emotional impact of such evidence is a subject of debate. If the board had the ability to provide knowledge beyond the realm of the 5 human senses, could it predict future events? The following part is a bit unclear in my memory. I don't remember who initially proposed the idea, but Jay expressed his desire to negotiate with the board for the winning lottery numbers. We inquired whether the board possessed such capabilities, and it responded affirmatively, claiming it could fulfill the request. However, it made it clear that it required something in return. At that point, I decided to conclude the Ouija board session in order to have a conversation with Jay. The three of us engaged in a discussion, recognizing that this arrangement could only be facilitated through Taryn and me acting as conduits for communication. Jay agreed to share a portion of his winnings with us. Regrettably, it was at this juncture that I had to clarify that the board most likely intended to demand his soul in exchange for the money. As a teenager, I immersed myself in books on witchcraft, demonology, and all things paranormal, even borrowing them from my unlikely source, the junior high library. With this knowledge, I understood that if Jay was willing to enter into a contract, he needed to ensure comprehensive protection in every conceivable way in order to claim his prize. I stressed to him the importance of safeguarding himself from any harm during or after collecting the winnings. I made it abundantly clear that the contract must cover every possible scenario, including perils such as death, injuries caused by weather events, diseases, animals, insects, and more. After meticulously crafting the contract, leaving no detail unaddressed, there was one final step: signing it in blood. The specifics elude my memory, whether Jay pricked himself with a needle or sliced his finger, but he ultimately affixed his name in his own blood. Both Taryn and I were dumbfounded by the extent to which he was willing to go for financial gain. While it shocked me, I couldn't say I was entirely surprised. Jay had always been fiercely competitive, yearning to be the one in our group with a better job, more money, or a nicer car. It was evident that he sought validation through material possessions. I hold no judgment against him for this. We were all young and grappling with our own insecurities. Some of us, myself included, sought validation through the attention of attractive partners. Others sought validation through the number of friends they had. No one is without flaws. We all have our hang-ups. Once the contract was finalized, we proceeded with the Ouija board session. We informed the entity that the contract had been written and declared our readiness to receive the winning lottery numbers. The entity complied and revealed the numbers to us. Jay swiftly jotted them down and kept them to himself, for obvious reasons. I don't recall the exact date of the next lottery drawing, but the three of us sat on the edge of our seats, consumed by anticipation of what was to come. We watched with bated breath as the numbers were drawn. The first number appeared, and it matched. The second number followed suit, also correct. The third number was drawn, and it too matched. We were utterly astounded by what was unfolding before our eyes. It felt like an unbelievable dream. Were our lives on the cusp of a seismic change? The possibilities afforded by the knowledge bestowed upon us by the board seemed boundless. In a hushed silence, we continued to observe as the numbers were drawn. This marked a pivotal moment in our ongoing rendezvous with the Ouija board. In the subsequent episode, you will discover the fate of Jay's contract and the winning lottery numbers. Fate would eventually intercede, disrupting our regular sessions with the Ouija board, only to be reignited 2 years later. During this time, peculiar phenomena and unsettling dreams will begin to materialize. The entity's power will make its presence known to me, but it will also unleash a more menacing force upon others. A singular individual will emerge as a common thread amidst these paranormal occurrences. Who is this person? All shall be revealed in the next episode as the enigmatic puzzle unfolds before your eyes.